Okay, so I'm Laura Kassler,
And I'm Ryan Thompson.
and we watched the Titanic for our movie. And basically, the Titanic is about there's like three stories going on at once. So there's a story of old Rose, who was going back and reflecting on her time with the Titanic when she was on the boat. There's a story, like the love story between Jack and Rose, who are two of the main characters. And there's a story of the Titanic ship, the Titanic sinking. So those are three of the main storylines going on throughout the entire thing. And yeah.
The two main roles were Jack and Rose. And Jack was played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and Rose was played by Kate Winslet. And then also starring in the movie was Old Rose, who was played by Gloria Stewart, who was 96 at the time, but they made her look 101. And Billy Zane, who is Rose's fiance, played by, Cal Hockley, who was Rose's fiance, played by Billy Zane.
And although like these are big parts of this movie, no one was more important than James Cameron, who was the producer, he was the director, he wrote the whole movie, and he was the person that made this movie come to life and make it as successful as it was. So basically, James Cameron talked about the message of the movie in an interview, and he talks about how the idea that the Titanic took 2 hours and 40 minutes to sink, and it gave the people on the boat time to like make moral decisions and how they wanted to handle themselves in the situation. And it is able to give the audience that ability to think about what they would do and how they would act. And along with that message, there's also a message inside the story regarding Jack and Rose's love story and how social status doesn't really matter on, like when it comes to falling in love. Because Jack was kind of on the bottom of the totem pole, and then Rose's family was way up there. So
its cultural impact, I think a lot of people before the movie came out didn't know all the details about the Titanic, so it gave viewers a visual representation of a tragic event that happened in the past, and it gave them also an accurate depiction of what occurred. Also, it gave the viewers a chance to feel invested in Jack and Rose's love story, so drawing a lot of young girls to the movie.
yes, because Leonardo was a handsome one. So as I previously mentioned, James Cameron produced it along with his co-producer Joe Landau, and James Cameron also directed it. And he became like so obsessed with this movie. He took dives under in the sea, in the ocean, to go and see like the actual Titanic, and like he studied it. He used actual things in the movie that were underwater. He just became obsessed with it. It took him years to finally get his visual and his idea to come to life. 20th Century Fox owns the movie, and yes.
It was released December 19th, 1997, and it was on the top box office for 15 weeks.
Yeah. And before Avatar, which is another James Cameron movie, it was the highest grossing movie of all time, making over $1.4 billion in gross profit. And the movie cost $200 million to make, and that's more than the actual boat of the Titanic. So it's a little fun fact for you. Next, we're going to talk about how its message, celebrities, cultural impact, etc., figured into its reception, both critically and commercially.
So it was nominated for 14 Oscars and won 11, including Best Picture, and James Cameron won Top Director. I think they were nominated for so many awards because of the performance of the actors, and the message makes this tragic event almost feel less tragic and more romantic. Commercially, the actors in this movie became extremely popular once the film was released, and Leonardo DiCaprio became a sex symbol, and he's been in countless movies.
Yeah, very popular.
It also draws the audience that was interested in the love story of the Titanic. So people who were interested in the story of the Titanic and Jack and Rose's love story.
It was basically like a movie that reached out to like a ton of different audiences. It was about people who liked history. It was about romantic. It was just a ton of different things coming together. And it was like funny at some parts, and it just reached out to a ton of different people. If the film was revisited today, we thought of a couple things we think might change. The movie was 3 hours and 30 minutes back when it was created, and nowadays movies don't tend to be that long. Like 2.5 hours max usually is how long movies are. So although the movie it was long and it got a lot of information, we think maybe it would be shorter and more dramatic, and because bigger things would happen more rapidly, and it would be a lot more dramatic if it was shorter. We also talked about who would be casted, and obviously they wouldn't cast Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. They're still around, but they would not be like the same young lovers that they played in the movie. They would probably cast, they would obviously cast young and like attractive people to play Jack and Rose because that's what drew the audience to begin with. And some examples for Jack may be people like Kirsten Williams Hemsworth, Ryan Gosling, Ansel Elgort, Josh Hutcherson. And same thing for Rose, just like a young, attractive girl, including like Blake Lively, Julianne Hough, or Shailene Woodley, who can take on that serious yet romantic role. Yeah.
And we thought the director would still be James Cameron because we don't think anyone else could have as much information and know as much about the Titanic as he would, and I don't think they would cast anybody else.
Yeah. He knows it all. And the message we thought for if they remade it today, it would still like come across really strong, but it probably wouldn't have as big as an impact because back when the movie was made, there were still like more connections to people who were actually on the boat, and like people like us, we didn't really have any like personal like I know someone who knows someone on the boat. Like we just know it as like a historic event, so it would still have a message, but maybe not as deep to the audience. So yeah.
And we think that since the movie would be shortened, they wouldn't be able to like develop the characters as well, and it probably wouldn't have been received as well.
Mm-hmm. And if it also was revisited today, we do have like a number of special effects now that we didn't have back then. But basically, the Titanic was like a big turning point in special effects because a lot of the things that happened were computer generated. There was visual effects and there were special effects, which we found out are different because visual effects. Well, special effects usually happen on set, whereas visual effects tend to be computer generated. So there was a large number of visual effects, including some examples of this were like when Jack and Rose are in the water and they had the breaths, like that was all from the computer, making the actors look frozen when they were, some of it was makeup, but others of it were obviously from the computer. And people falling off the ship when they like jumped down, a lot of those people were fake people. And much of the boat, the whole entire boat wasn't made. A lot of it was made from a computer. And another fact about that is when like Jack and Rose are in the boat, like at the very end, the water's only 3 feet deep, whereas you see Jack like go underwater and like go all the way down. And they use obviously special and visual effects to make it look different from that. So, yeah. And you can talk about this.
Okay. About the unique of this. Okay. The sets. They like only half the boat they actually like recreated. So when they show big like pictures of the boat or like when the boat's moving across the water, that's computer generated. And then James Cameron, in the scene where Jack draws Rose nude, James Cameron's hands are actually the one drawing Rose's picture.
Yeah. So that was like kind of a special effect. Like we all thought it was Jack, but it really wasn't his hands. So yeah. So I mentioned this earlier, but a big reason why this story is unique is because there are 3 like big storylines all happening at the same time. So it is like about the Titanic sinking, the love story between Jack and Rose, and old Rose looking back at her time on the ship. So that's one big thing that makes the movie unique.
And they all like fit together, like you're not confused. Like if that happened in a movie today, it probably wouldn't have been received the same.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Extra?
Yeah.
Okay, so some extra facts that we found were that the water they used to film the movie was not as cold as the actors are portraying it to be. It was actually warm.
It was like 80 degrees. So and another fun fact about this too is that Kate Winslet, she didn't wear her wetsuit when they were filming, so she got pneumonia even though the water wasn't really that cold. So that happened.
Much of the footage of the Titanic at the bottom of the sea is real. So because James Cameron would dive down all the time and take pictures and videos.
Yes. But towards the end of the movie, when Rose is floating on a boat, floating on a door in the sea with Jack, that door was actually from the actual Titanic. They went down and they brought it back up, so it's a fun fact.
Although the story of Jack and Rose is not real, there was an actual person named Jack Dawson on the Titanic.
Yeah. And then something unique about the ending is that it like leaves the audience like wondering what is actually happening because it ends with the old Rose throwing away her necklace and then going to bed and having a dream about being with Jack. and we don't really know if she's dying and she's like up in heaven with Jack or if she's having a dream. So that was one unique thing about the ending of the movie. We have a couple other fun facts too. Is that the scene where Jack and Rose met in the movie was actually improvised completely by the actors, so that wasn't scripted at all. And then also, something like that also happened with the nude scene. Leonardo DiCaprio kind of like stuttered a little bit in the movie, and James Cameron liked it, so he kept it in.
And over 100 of the extras had James Cameron had provided them backstories of people who were actually on the ship, so that they could feel what it was like to be on the ship, so that they could act better.
So overall, it's a very successful movie.